ready for a Spongebob Movie Sponge on the Run review? We have one for you right here. Welcome to the Dill Pickle Movie Network. I am Dylan Randazzo. As you can see, it's very, very sunny because it is a beautiful new day in Bikini Bottom. That's right, the Spongebob movie Sponge on the Run just premiered on Paramount Plus, which is actually the streaming service that used to be called CBS All Access. It has now been rebranded to Paramount Plus. It has a bunch of new library titles, a bunch of new things to explore on there, including the entirety of Star Trek, old series, Next Generation, the movies. You have a lot of the old Nickelodeon shows that I grew up with, like Drake and Josh, and Zoe 101, and Danny Phantom, and of course SpongeBob. Today we are talking about the newest movie to the Paramount Plus library, actually its first new title since dropping literally today, which is the Spongebob movie Sponge on the Run. Now I realize that this has been released internationally in 2020, but it came to America today on the streaming service, so that's why we're talking about it. Following in the footsteps of such a great movie in 2005 that was the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, I was a little worried that it wouldn't capture the same charm and magic, because that movie was such a tentpole of my childhood. And I will admit from the get-go, this was not as good as the original SpongeBob movie from 2005. It's very clear that the quality of SpongeBob itself isn't necessarily the same it has been at its peak years and years ago. That being said, though, it's still hard not to love these characters and just love watching them go on these adventures. One of the things that I was a little worried I wouldn't like that I really did like was the animation style itself. It's this new, more 3D looking animation. It's very different from the 2D animation that we're used to, which is why I was a little concerned. Disney has been doing a brand new style of Mickey Mouse for their shorts that I'm not necessarily a huge fan of. Goofy especially looks just different. But this animation style I really liked. The colors really pop off the screen. They really did a really good job crafting these characters within this new animation style, and I really thought it was gorgeous. Start to finish, just everything visually was gorgeous. The story is, of course, about SpongeBob, who loses his pet snail Gary and has to go on an adventure to find him. Now, there was an episode in SpongeBob's earlier run where Gary did go missing and SpongeBob was trying to find him, but this is definitely a different twist on that, because it turns out Gary didn't just go missing. He was stolen and given to King Poseidon. It's all about this buddy comedy road trip between SpongeBob and Patrick, along with this really hilarious robot voiced by Aquafina, and they go on this large adventure to try to rescue Gary, but then also convince the king to give them Gary back. Once SpongeBob and Patrick are gone, we kind of get a little It's a Wonderful Life-esque story of what would happen if the world had no SpongeBob in it. You start to see the consequences for SpongeBob's vacancy within Bikini Bottom, and you start to see how Bikini Bottom operates without him. This, of course, leads to a lot of the other side characters, Mr. Krabs, Sandy, Squidward, recollecting their first experiences meeting SpongeBob and why he is so important to their lives. And this is honestly where a lot of the emotional crux of the story comes from. This is where I started to almost well up with tears a little bit, seeing these first encounters, SpongeBob and Patrick meeting for the first time, or, SpongeBob and Squidward meeting for the first time. These emotional backstories that really work not just on its own, but in accompanying the overall narrative and making it stronger and richer. A movie that came out last year, Scoob, tried to do the same thing, but the rest of the film didn't really match the strengths of that backstory between Scooby and Shaggy, whereas here I think the flashbacks really complement the main narrative. I will have to say, because of this buddy road trip and because they need to make it a long enough movie to justify it as a movie, you get a few scenes that just are a little out of place and almost feel like filler. There was a whole dream sequence where Patrick and SpongeBob go into this tavern with these dancing, ghostly zombie pirates, and there's a huge musical number, and Keanu Reeves is there as a tumbleweed named Sage.
I'm made out of sage and I am a sage.
I think there are some weird choices in the middle act where they were just kind of beefing up the story just to try to justify making it a full-length movie rather than a 45-minute or hour-long special. And I think this is where some of the faults in the story come. This is where it starts to drag down the narrative a little bit. The film does stick the landing, though, in that third act. Like I said, because of this whole recollection that all these characters are having about a life without SpongeBob and why SpongeBob means so much to them, you get some really nice emotional backstories that really hammers home the sentimentality mentality of this movie, and really what SpongeBob means to all of us watching. SpongeBob was a character from my childhood that literally I've been watching since I could watch TV in the first place, and I know a lot of other people share that. The thing with SpongeBob is that it doesn't just appeal to kids, it appeals to adults, it appeals to parents, and I think that is some of the beauty that SpongeBob has over a lot of other Nickelodeon shows, and why, when these characters are sharing why SpongeBob is so important to them, it really relates and speaks to the audience too. I think kids will have a blast with this, even though it gets a little silly and a little excess in the middle. Like I said, I think the kids will still have a fun time watching these pirates dance and sing and fool around. Snoop Dogg shows up there, Danny Trejo shows up there. There's a lot of great little cameos and little moments to explore in this film, and I think while it does not live up to the strengths of the peak SpongeBob from the early 2000s, I do think it functions very well on its own, and it's a fun family film. Now, whether or not this is worth investing in Paramount Plus, I'm not entirely sure. You know, if you want to introduce your kids to a whole library of Nickelodeon shows that a lot of these 90s kids grew up on, and pass it on to a new generation, I think Paramount Plus is a great way to do that. If you're a huge fan of reality television like The Amazing Race or Survivor, I think it's a great platform for that. I do think if you're a Trekkie, this is the perfect place for that. But otherwise, I think you're going to be able to fill your needs elsewhere. I think, you know, in terms of a movie library, as I said, this is one of the weaker movie libraries I've seen. Sure, it has all the Godfather films, all the Indiana Jones films, but there weren't any huge tentpole films aside from that really caught my attention and said, wow, I should really subscribe to that. If you already have CBS All Access, you already get Paramount Plus, congratulations. I hope you enjoy it, and I do think this is a film worth checking out on that service. Thank you all so much for watching. Tomorrow, you will get the first episode of our new podcast, The Great American Film Off with Crosby Rosa. I'm so excited for that. You can find that anywhere you can find podcasts and here on the Dill Pickle Movie Network on YouTube. Mondays, we will always have Marvelous Movie Mondays, which is a podcast I do with Kelsey Kilpatrick, talking all things Marvel. We have a WandaVision finale coming tomorrow that we will be talking about on Monday. Otherwise, you can check me out here on the Dill Pickle Movie Network. We got lots of cool stuff coming for you. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.